So it's probably pretty dark looking in this room, and I can't really help that it's late at night. It's probably like almost 12 at this point, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about Jojo chapters 61 to 67, I think it was, for part 5, Vento Aureo, which is the babyface arc. And I gotta say, while this fight was interesting because of babyface specifically, I actually like Jojo less and less because of this, even more so because of this fight. And now here's my thing. I personally think so far Jojo has been something akin to like a Gary Stu. He always has the right answer. He always knows what's going on. He can figure anything out immediately. His stand is OP. He can kind of heal himself now. It's like, is there anything he can't do? And he almost seemingly has no flaws. Now this might change. I'm not finished part 5, of course, so I can't guarantee anything, but it's just like, can anything, whenever Jojo is in any fight ever, he makes it like 10% less interesting, because I'm always just like, oh, well, Jojo's there, so like, everything's fine. I mean, babyface is interesting because it's like a computer thing, but then it like, so in this particular case, he takes the blood of Bucciolati, gets all of his information, finds somebody who's his exact opposite, sort of, and then makes them create a child. Like, babyface, like, weirdly impregnates her, which is really fucking freaky. It almost looks like it rapes her, or something. And I'm not saying it literally raped her or something along those lines, but I mean, like, there's a scene, there's a manga panel where it's like her hand and its hand's over it, and it's weird, and she blacks out, and maybe it didn't do, I don't know, but it somehow impregnates a female host, and then the female host gives birth like 3 minutes later, and it's like a little tiny thing that it hides. And so it learns from its mother, but also from Melone? Is his name Melone? It learns from him, and very quickly it learns like to kill and the want to kill, and it kills its mom, and it goes off to find Bucciolati. Interestingly, Babyface is both that kind of computer, but it's also sort of this small, growing child stand. It's called, technically that's Babyface, although Malone refers to it as the sons of Babyface. They're supposed to be invisible, long-range auto stand things. So they kind of just have a personality of its own. They do whatever they want. They fulfill their purpose, really. And what makes it interesting is that it can, like, reshape itself into other things. So it's hiding in plain sight by essentially being a cabinet or a desk or something like that. And it ended up taking Trish and taking Bucciolati and reforming them into something else, because he can do that with other things too. So we don't even really get to see what it looks like for most of the part, because most of this particular arc, because it's taking the shape of something else. And I think that's pretty cool, and that's why it's probably technically invisible, because you can't see what it looks like. And it was interesting to see Jojo try and figure out what was going on. Now, the thing that's not interesting is that once Jojo figures out whatever he needs to figure out, it's immediately just done. There's no other learning about it. It's just done. Like, oh no, Jojo's in big trouble, what's gonna go on? And then he's like, oh no, actually what happened is I'll take inanimate objects, like, you know, you had gave me an idea, you made me grow. I'll take this inanimate object like my ladybug button and turn it into an eye, and then just plop it back into the part you took out. No big deal, you know. And he does that with his throat and his foot, which got cut off, which is actually kind of fucked up when you think about it. And it's like, okay, I guess. I mean, that's kind of OP. I've always heard people talk about Jojo being like the best healer in JoJo. Is this what they mean? That he can do shit like this? Because that's mildly infuriating. Because immediately after this happens, Babyface stands absolutely no chance, pretty much. Every time Babyface is like, I got a sleight upper hand, Jojo just immediately cuts him off. Then we see Babyface, and he kind of just looks like a little dude with like spikes coming out of his head, and he's got like spiky teeth. Kind of looks weird. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then nothing really happens after that. Yeah, Jojo and him fight a little bit more, but it's mostly Jojo just kicking his ass, and Babyface getting really mad about it, and his rage causes him to like grow kind of exponentially, like, well, not exponentially, I guess, but he grows a lot. You know, his rage causes him to grow to an enormous amount, and then you think, oh, maybe a little bit more is gonna happen, but I can see that there's only 7 parts to Babyface, and we're on part 6, so the answer's probably no. It's not gonna be continued. It seems like Babyface has the upper hand. Oh no, actually Jojo does. Actually no, Babyface does. And then the thing that also confuses me is just like little things like he cut off his own hand, or more like Golden Experience let his hand get removed so that he can turn it into a piranha. I didn't realize he could turn, like, the thing about Stans is, what confuses me is that he can turn inanimate objects into life. Like, he can give life to just random things, like a brick or a button. And so, like, as a stand, does the stand's hand technically count as that? Like, he let his own hand go and then turned it into a piranha, which then went inside Babyface and ate him out. Like, that's a little bit weird, but okay, I guess. And then later on, it's like, oh, actually, I brought the bike back. See, now this is weird, where his hand gets chopped off again, I guess. Or when it comes out as a piranha, it probably reverts back to the hand. I don't even really remember, to be honest, at this point. And then he says, bring it back, my Golden Experience, but it wasn't his hand he brought back. He somehow brought back the motorcycle and then fused it with Babyface so that when Babyface would try and reform, all the gas and sparks and shit, whatever, would kind of just all go off and make him explode and he would die. What the fuck was that? Like, there was like a huge chunk of that fight that I actually thought was pretty interesting, and then he healed himself and it was like, oh, actually Jojo's really OP, and sometimes his stand and his fights don't really make sense because he's Jojo. And that's what bothers me, is that part. I don't think part 5 is a bad part. I know a lot of people shit on it in part 6, and like I said, I do know certain spoilers because it's really hard to be in the Jojo fandom for a long period of time and not find out spoilers. Even if you're reading the manga pretty quickly, unless you're actively making sure you're not getting spoiled, it is super easy to get spoiled, because even people who have read the manga and know there are people out there who haven't, things can slip. It's super easy, and I don't blame them or anything. It's just like, I know stuff is supposed to happen later, and I'm like, you know, that later stuff sounds kind of cool, but I don't know how I feel about this right now, because part 5's fine, but Jojo seems a little too OP. And I understand, you know, all the JoJos are kind of OP, you know, in some ways. Josuke seems pretty OP with Crazy Diamond's ability. Joseph was, in a way, kind of OP just because of his, like, intelligence, or at the very least his ability to come up with good strategies. And, you know, Jotaro was literally OP in the sense that he was like, oh, I can just punch my way through every problem and then stop time later. And, you know, when you look at Jojo, you're like, well, he's not that much more OP. But at the very least, Jonathan was like, Jonathan's negative was kind of that he was too nice, but that he was kind of a Gary Stu too, and that he was like, I am powerful and nice Ugu. But he always got his ass kicked by Dio, so he didn't win all the time at the very least. It seems like Jojo is too strong and too smart. Like, I think it was the last set of chapters where it was the Grateful Dead, which was a great small arc, but the thing that kind of annoyed me was that everything was going wrong, and then Jojo just explains stuff. And then it's like, oh, thanks Jojo, and then they leave, and we never really have to care about him again. Why couldn't the other characters just figure it out? Why did Jojo have to figure it out for them? There's no need for that. You know, at the very least, Jotaro was an asshole, and he wasn't good with people, and I mean, that's not really much of a flaw, I guess. But at the very least, it didn't feel like he was a Gary Stu, and Joseph has a lot of flaws, like cheating on his wife. And Josuke's stupid, and he does not have the answer to everything, and that is fine. You know who solves problems? Sorry, I had to stop talking for a little bit because a giant fucking helicopter just flew around, I guess, and you probably heard at least some of that, so sorry. But anyway, do you know who is the smart one in part 4? Like, Koichi, not Josuke. In part 3, you know who it was? Not Jotaro. It was fucking Kakyoin, even if he was absent for part of it. But you know what I mean? Or it was Abdul, or everyone but Jotaro. And in this, it's like, who's the smartest character, it seems? Oh, yeah, it's Jotaro. Who's the most overpowered character? Yeah, it's Jotaro. Who's gonna heal everybody? Oh, it's Jotaro. Like, if you look at everybody, minus maybe Bucciolati, they all have some obvious flaw. Like, Abacchio was kind of just a huge fucking asshole, and he is all about the orders, but because he follows orders so strictly, he can kind of lose sight of everything else that's important and proper strategy. And yeah, okay, yeah, maybe we should go and fulfill our mission, but then everything's gonna get fucked because Aluso still might get away with doing everything and get the key and get Trish, you know? Just going through and doing whatever your mission is not always the priority. Sometimes there's other things to take care of. Fugo has very calm to insane rage, blinding rage. Same thing with Narantia. Narantia is just blatantly stupid, and maybe not. It maybe is not calm, but he gets filled with rage so easily. But mainly his big flaw is that he's a big fucking dum-dum. And then Mista's thing is his thing with the number 4, and I mean his Sex Pistols is actually kind of really strong, actually, in a way. He's a bit too superstitious, and also he is also dumb. And sometimes it feels like he throws caution to the wind and kind of just YOLOs it. It didn't feel that way necessarily with the Grateful Dead, but when he was going after Kraftwerk, I felt like he was way too underprepared. For someone who has a complete mystery enemy state, he just throws caution to the wind and jumps right into it, which is kind of weird. But we have all these members that have at least some flaws to them, and then Jotaro just comes in like, yeah, what up, I'm OP. And I'm kind of going on a long rant about this and not really even talking about the chapter, because honestly I thought the chapter is fine. I liked Babyface. I like its design. I think it has a cool ability because it's really weird and specific, and it's not just like I punch and kick or I shoot flames or something like that. Admittedly, we haven't had something like that since part 3, but you know, I like that it's like a weird impregnation creates a small child, but they're different every time depending on like how you teach it. It's like I don't remember what they're called, but it's like a there's been video games, I think it was on the DS, and they're making like Princess Maker or something like that on the Nintendo Switch, where you like raise your princess, and depending on what you teach them or how you do scold them, they turn out differently. It's like he's playing one of those like Princess or Prince Maker video games or something. I thought it was funny. What I didn't think was fun was Jotaro just completely overpowering him once he even got a semblance of an idea about it. Oh, I kind of figured out how you work, so now I just upgraded my abilities, and also I just, you know, did everything else and kicked your ass. That's not very fun for me. Am I enjoying part 5 overall? Yes. Do I think Jotaro is a great JoJo as of right now, and do I think his fights are interesting? No. And I'm sorry about that. If you like Jotaro, if you like his matches, I guess, because I don't think Babyface is shitty, I just kind of don't really like Jotaro in the way he does things, but if you like Jotaro and his stand and his fights and everything, that's totally fine, that's okay, good for you. I just personally find them kind of uninteresting in a way. Sorry, I guess. Let me know what you thought of Babyface's arc, and I guess maybe even Jotaro at this point in the comments below, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!